Okay, this post is a response to a very good friend of mine. A good friend of mine who happens to be an atheist. He made a post on Facebook today that I think deserves a response. He's an atheist. I'm a believer. I'm a son of God. So there's no way that after seeing that particular post, I'm able to sit silent. So we have to actually set the record straight when they're doing these kinds of things, because most of the time what they do is they pluck out little pieces of scripture and try to use it to paint a certain picture of God. Okay, so here we go. So it's basically a Facebook post. It goes, Sunday Inspiration by Marlon Johnson. He's a well-known Bahamian. Why would you revere, honor, and worship a depraved monster? That is what he is calling God. That is where atheists have come. He just went on Facebook and called God a depraved monster. Then he posted a picture of God. It said, kill every woman who has known a man by sleeping with him. But all the young girls who have not known a man, keep them alive for yourselves. They're quoting Moses in Numbers 31 and 17. You know, anyone who does not know the Bible and they read that, that would sound pretty incriminating. It would sound like, you know, you would have some questions. Well, that's what we're here for, to answer these questions, because what they did was pluck scripture, and we can't allow this kind of stuff to happen. First of all, what happened there would basically have happened in today's time. Any president, any leader would have done exactly what Moses did. His soldiers had gone out into a war, and while they were in the war, they brought back some people who were contaminated. They had a plague. There was a plague going on. They had killed the men, and they had left the women. And so what God was telling them to do, what God informed them, was that there was a plague. Okay, and this plague was killing people, and it was coming through the men. So we don't know today what this plague is. They knew what the plague was. Moses understood what the plague was. And so, therefore, he was trying to protect his nation. So, I'm going to read that scripture for you. He did not put the whole scripture. It's verse 16. So, I'm going to put it for you because, you know, this is how they deceive people. In verse 16, he said, behold, these caused the children of Israel, through their counsel of Balaam, to commit trespass against the Lord, and in the matter of Por. And there was a plague among the congregation of the Lord. There was a plague going on, and that is verse 16, which he did not read for you. Okay? This is the same thing that any president would have done. I can guarantee you, if an airplane full of people with Ebola is heading towards America, that airplane is going to be stopped. So this is actually what was going on here. There was a plague. They were trying to keep these people from contaminating the rest of them. Like I said, anyone would have done that. Not only did he say to remove those people who were contaminated, to deal with them, to kill them. Okay? All the women who had slept with men. They'd killed the men, but they brought the women who had slept with them. And these women were contaminated. They were going to bring them into the camp. So Moses said, no. These people are sick and dying. They have a contagious disease. You cannot bring them. You have to deal with them. Okay? To protect the nation. Not only did he say to deal with them, he also said that the soldiers themselves should stay out of the city, out of the camps, because they were unclean. So Moses' own soldiers who had been contaminated or exposed to anything had to stay out. Okay, and if we go on to further scripture, not only did these men have to purify themselves, he went on to say that they had to purify their clothes and everything else that they brought with them. Okay, there was an epidemic. So that little quote that these atheists are passing around to deceive people and paint God as some evil, demented monster, that is nonsense. Okay, now next. They talk about this thing about the girls who were abducted and were raped and were kept by the men, and that is not so. That did not happen that way. They let the girls live because they were disease free. All right, the disease was spreading through men, so the men were destroyed. The women who slept with men were destroyed. The girls were allowed to live because they were contamination free. What happened to these girls is they were made bond servants. This is something that happened typically at the time. People were made bond servants. Today we call that slavery. In the Bible times was not the same as the slavery that we know today. When I say today, I'm talking about the recent slavery that Africans suffered at the hands of in America. Slavery in the Bible days was different. You were a bond servant and you were paid. It was a different story. You became a bond servant for different reasons. Either you owed a debt, you committed a crime, and they made it so that you had to work for this person for a certain period of time. There was a time on it, and then after that period of time, you were able to be free. But during that time, you got paid. Several Bible scriptures give evidence of this. For example, the children of Israel, they were slaves in Egypt. When they were leaving, Pharaoh said, "Okay, Moses, you can take children of Israel, they can go, but they must leave their gold and their cattle." Remember, cattle was big wealth at the time. That's where most people got their wealth. So they could leave, they must leave their gold and their cattle. Now, if they were slaves, the way we know about what happened in America, they wouldn't have gold and cattle. They would only have themselves and the clothes on their back. And not even that. That would belong to the slave masters. But they were paid, okay? But they were bond servants, which means they were obliged to continue working for their masters for a certain period of time, okay? So another example of that is when they gave a story of a master who had forgiven his servant, his slave, who had owed him money. And as soon as that slave went out, he saw another slave who owed him money, and he beat up the slave. And the master heard about it, and he was like, "How could I forgave you when you owed me money, but this person owed you money and you didn't forgive them? So I'm going to punish you." But the moral of that story, the relevant part of that story is, if the slavery then was the same as the slavery we know, the slave could have never owed his master money in the first place. And another slave could not owe another slave, because the slavery that we knew that happened in America was basically humans were treated like animals, like a horse. A horse, you get fed, you get clothed, you get housed, and that's it. You don't benefit financially or economically. But that was not what happened in the Bible days. So these women would take, your girls were taken and made bond servants, and they were allowed to work. We have bond servants today in our society, and it's, for example, if the government or a corporation sent you to university for 4 years to get your degree, you are going to be bonded to them to work for them for 4 years. You're a bond servant, and that is in today. You're a bond servant. You must work the time back, and if you leave them before that time is up, you owe them. So you have to owe them for the balance. That is a bond servant. So that is what these women become. Okay, and that is the full story of what happened there, and that is a better understanding.